Hello, welcome everybody who is joining us today. I am live here with Kim Barnes Jefferson talking about midlife confidence. And this is going to be such a brilliant conversation. I'm really looking forward to it because Kim is the host of a podcast, and she is also the creator of the Belly Fat Code. And her entire area of expertise is helping women over 40 feel more confident in their bodies, with all of the kind of knock-on impacts that has. And I am Charlotte Rooney. If you don't know me, I am a women's leadership coach and mentor. I help women in middle management to be more effective leaders. And I think this is an area that I hadn't necessarily really put enough thought into, right? The role of how we look in how we can be effective leaders. So Kim, let me just start there, right? Because the reason that I haven't put enough effort into this is, if I'm perfectly honest, I feel a little bit ashamed of how much I care about what I look like, because I want to believe that as an intelligent, rational, successful person,
evolved woman, right? Like, it should be
yes,
about my brain and what I contribute and all of the things.
Exactly. And that, I feel honestly a little bit shallow when I think that, I actually do care what I look like, as opposed to, what I'm contributing to the world and the relationships that I have. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's help unshame, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who has those thoughts.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, in the last, few years, the movement has been like women empowerment, right? And so, like, we are more than mothers, we're more than sex objects. And, to feel in our power isn't about, ooh, how does my butt look in these jeans? It's like, how's my boobs look with this bra? Like, we're supposed to be beyond that thought. But as women, we used to think that we had to put on our power suits and all of that. And that's how we were going to, like, take on the world. But we still care. If you think about it, Charlotte and I were at a retreat probably a few months ago, and we had to compliment the women in the room, but we couldn't say anything physical.
Yes.
And if you think about women, we'll say something superficial like, "Oh, Charlotte, your hair looks really good today," or, "Oh, where'd you get your nails done?" Or, we that's the level we operate on, even though we want to be this evolved woman. And it's really easy for you to shrink when you don't feel like something you care about isn't looking just good. So, like, maybe you're the nail person and you're like, "Oh, my nails are chipped. I hope no one's staring at my nails." Or maybe you get your eyelashes done and you're like, "Oh, I definitely need a fill and someone's going to notice it," or, what have you. We all kind of like have that inner chatter about something on our physique that we think is the best part or the worst part of our physique.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly that is why it's important, right? It's not, I mean, quite apart from the fact, if you want to spend time on your appearance and you want to look nice, there's nothing actually wrong with that. It's not
Exactly.
in competition with being a person of substance. But I think it's also the fact that it's that mental chatter that takes away from your ability to concentrate on something else. Because realistically, probably nobody else noticed your nails, or if they did, they glossed right over it. But if that's running in the back of your mind while you are trying to persuade the board to make a decision to give you some funding, it is definitely going to make your pitch less effective.
Yeah. Or the whole time you're sitting there, you're playing with your hands, hoping, you're like, "Oh my God, they're staring at my hands and I'm not going to get the money," or whatever it is that you might be doing. And it is that, like, it's that low level anxiety that a lot of us operate in. And I don't really think too many of us realize how much of a barrier that can put in front of us. You know, let's be honest. So we were trapped in our homes for what, 2.5 years. And now we're kind of, I'm going to call it back to normal, where might be going to more in-person events, more in-person networking events. And now you're probably like, "Oh, snap. Ooh, how do I look?" Right. Do my pants fit the same way? Or, what's my appearance look like? Then before, I only had to look good from the chest up and
Yep.
everything else could be a hot mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, I think this is an experience that probably women of all ages
Oh
can
yeah.
relate to. But I'm curious about this kind of relationship because your area is specifically midlife and after 40. And I know for me, I had a bit of a sort of, pretty insecure in my 20s,
Hmm.
had a bit of a peak of confidence in my 30s where I was just like, I don't care what
Right,
anybody else
right.
thinks. I am empowered. And then, yeah, in my 40s, I am noticing that I'm kind of swinging back the other way. So, what's at play there?
Honestly, I feel like what you just described, like in the 20s, you were just like, we were all just, if you had your act together, like God love you. And then, in your 30s, you felt like, we got, our first kind of real job, right? With the real responsibilities. You might have been starting to build a family and so forth. And then you get into your 40s and you kind of get to that point where sometimes you're like, I don't really give a shit. And then, but then the other part of it is like, I used to not have to work this hard
Mm.
to not put on weight. I didn't have to work this hard. I could eat what the hell ever I wanted or easily like pull things back and know that I could lose 5 or 10 pounds before my next holiday. But I think when we get into our 40s, you know, the best way I've heard it described, and I think it's spot on, is that our 40s is our second puberty. And so if you think about in our teens, preteens, everyone told us about the birds and the bees and how like we were going to be, blossoming into beautiful young men and women, right? Everyone told us all about that. And they sat us down. We had, I think a week or two of class about puberty. No one sat us down and talked about midlife. If you think about midlife when we were younger, it was the Golden Girls. The Golden Girls were in their early 50s. And you're like, I am not going to be a Golden Girl in my early 50s. When I was watching the show, I had no idea how old they were. I'm thinking they're 70, 80 years old.
I thought so too.
They were in their freaking 50s. And I'm like, sweet Georgia Brown. Like that's not the age of when a Golden Girl.
Mm.
And so we never talked about what happens on the backside. And it's our second puberty where our hormones are going crazy to get us ready for motherhood. Now our hormones are like going crazy to get us out of motherhood. And no one talked about how the feelings that we have. Like, yeah, we are going to think about when you're a teenager, you had rage for no reason. You were just pissed
Hmm.
off because it was Tuesday. I can get pissed off because it's Tuesday at 45. And I don't think many people talk about that. And so it's
Mm.
really easy for you to get into that insecurity because like we don't have those hormones surging anymore. So the one hormone that gives women resilience is called progesterone. And progesterone is what is our like I don't give a bleep uh
Hmm.
hormone. When that starts to get a little wonky, we all get a little insecure. We're like, "Ooh, like someone could have said something to you and like back in the day you'd be like, I don't care." Now you're like,
Mm.
oh wow, does she really think that? Does he really think that? And you get a little bit more insecure than you did where before you would have just like sloughed it off and moved on with your day.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess that's also making me think that as you notice, as you say, I'm getting angry just because it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's this element as well that you can sort of start to look for an explanation of like, why am I behaving differently? Why am I feeling differently? Why am I losing control maybe?
Yeah.
And very easily, if you don't know that this is what's going on with your hormones, you could sort of make the assumptions like, oh, I must be burning out. Oh, I must be depressed. Oh, I must have anxiety. I must have, I don't know, late onset ADHD.
Hmm.
And so you go searching for explanations, but not necessarily somewhere helpful.
Yeah, Dr. Google is, our best and our worst friend, right? You can go from having like a mosquito bite to it being like some, rare disease in like 2.2 searches. But I feel like a lot of women do experience this. They feel like you're like, I'm going freaking crazy. Like I'm yelling at my kids for stuff that I wouldn't have yelled at them about, or my partner at work, I'm just losing my stuff on everybody. And so a lot of women will go to the doctor and I'll be like, look, something's going on. And women initially will be put on, antidepressants or anxiety medication or all this when it's really just a natural progression of our hormones declining. And, from what I've been able to speak to other menopausal doctors, they're like, we get 5 minutes of education about menopause. Like we're just like,
Mm.
yeah, it happens. And usually it totally happens to women in the 50s and there's really nothing you can do about it. So just let them know. And, pat them on the knee and say you'll get through it and send them on their way. But now just women, we're woke now. And we're not going to be told that like, get over it. Like, no, there has to be a reason. And we're not going to be pushed into the corner to like just suck it up. And they're really powerful women that have had to quit their careers because one, they're just mentally like just can't focus on at work anymore because the brain fog's too crazy, or they're just like they're anger management and they're like either pushed out of their jobs or they're just like I need to tap because like I am just not good for anybody. And the good news is that enough women are saying enough is enough and
Mm.
we deserve more than just take some Xanax and take a nap.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to come back to kind of where we started as well, which was talking about the physical changes as
Mm-hmm.
well, in terms of, maybe you put on weight, maybe where you're putting on weight changes. I know you're the creator of the belly fat code. So talk to us about why it's so transformational for someone to actually understand all of this and to be able to, I mean, I hate to say lose weight, because like that could
Right.
sound like such a toxic thing to say. But if you are wanting to lose the belly fat, talk to us about why it can be so transformational to be able to do that.
Well, as I started this, I wanted to be like menopause coach, right? And then I was like, as I was thinking about it, I'm like, what is the thing that bothers people the most? And it's typically how I look, right? I went from feeling like, well, let me just take a step back. Most of my clients are A plus plus people, right? They know they're like, I used to be able to do A, B, C, and D. I'm a driver, and now I can't drive my body, and I'm pissed. And so I started with belly fat because it's what most people notice the most, right?
Mm.
It's like, wait a second, I can't button my pants, or like that button is digging into your belly and you're just like uncomfortable the entire day. And that's all you can focus on. And so for most of the women that I work with, they already work out and they're just like, I work out, I eat well, like what the hell's happening? And for many of us, it is that hormonal change. And that is, it feels like it came on overnight and but it didn't. Maybe at 40, let's be honest, most of the people who are listening to this podcast are in middle management, right? So it's like maybe I used to be able to leave right at 5 o'clock and head to the gym, or be able to go to the gym first thing in the morning and then go to work. Maybe work out at lunch. Well, maybe some of my responsibilities expanded, so I now have more meetings. So I got to get my booty there earlier, or maybe I'm staying later. Maybe I'm entertaining clients after work. So maybe I now have children. So if they're under 10, I might not be sleeping as much. So going to the gym in the morning, probably not happening. And then after work, I'm probably not going to the gym after work because I'm shuttling them to all of their various activities or picking them up from childcare. So it's like our life shifts, especially in those 30s into those 40s. And we don't realize like how much we were doing in the past. So we try to go back to the doing, but our lives aren't there anymore. So when I created the belly fat code, it was like teaching women that it wasn't about like eating less and doing more. It was like, how do you work now? Right? What is your life now? And how do we start to work with our body, knowing that it's doing all of this gymnastics that we might not be able to truly control, but there are things we can do to regain control without beating our body into submission.
Mm. So that sort of, previous, like, well, I'll just eat a little bit less and run a little bit further. That's not going to work now.
Not anymore. That ship has sailed. I, for me, I work primarily with people in the US. And in the US, the average woman by the time they hit 40 have been on 16 different diets. And by then, your body's like, girlfriend, I know exactly what you're trying to do. And I'm not going to give it up so easily. I'm not going to be so easy. You have to do a little bit more than eat less and exercise more. It's got to be a little bit more nuanced for you.
Hmm. Okay. So you said, it's about learning what works for your body now. If there's women listening and they're thinking, what, I totally hear all of this. I'm definitely thinking that this is something that's going on for me. Where would you suggest that she starts?
So the two biggest places that most people think, like I said, most people want to tell me what to eat, tell me how to work out. The two things I'm going to tell you what to do that are completely different than what you think I'm going to say. Girlfriend, how much are you sleeping? How much are you sleeping? If you're not getting at least 7 hours of sleep, I don't care how hard you work out at the gym, and I don't care how clean your food is. If you sleep like crap, it's like putting water into a bucket with a hole. Like you're just fighting against yourself. Second thing, stress. If you are a stress ball, and so many people will tell me, look, that's just how my life is. No, that's just how you choose your life to be. There are certain things. I'm a recovering stress ball, so I'm not throwing shade. I was that person I didn't sleep. If I was like, I would always be like, okay, what about this? What about this? And I'd be list making in my head because I was that type A stress ball. And it's hard to turn the chatter off. But the biggest thing I had to do is had to learn to realize that every little thing I did wasn't going to be cataclysmic, right? Like, I'm not a doctor, not at all. So what I do for a living, no one's going to die. I am not curing cancer. I am not solving world hunger. And I had to just take some of the stuff I had up here and just put it on the shelf and just be okay with being okay. And there was a woman that I used to listen to her podcast, and I can't think of her name right now. And she said this, and it just was like the kind of sometimes you hear something that you're just like it was just like the world just opened up for you. And she said, it's okay if you get a B-.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get the A+ and the extra credit and the extra work and, go for the B-. And when she said that, it was
I can hear the heart stopping from here. Even as someone who often gives this advice as well, there is still a little twinge in my head that is like, absolutely not. I'm sorry, B- is not okay.
you're like, but if I just did this one more thing, and then of course it's like pulling a string out of a sweater. That one more thing just unravels the next one more thing, and it's 3 a.m. and you're like, why didn't I sleep?
Exactly. And I completely agree. I think it's also that element of, certainly in a lot of jobs, I think it's shifting a little bit at the moment, but in a lot of jobs, that being stressed, that being busy, that working late, always being on, answering emails at midnight, it's like seen almost as a badge of honor, as a sign of status. I'm so
Yes.
important that I have to
Right.
be available at all times. And
Right.
that is, for want of a better word, somewhat addictive, right? Because it feels good to get that little hit of, oh, somebody needs me, or look at me,
Right.
I'm so important, right,
Right.
answering my email. I remember when I first got given a mobile phone for work, which shows that I clearly am in your age demographic, right? But that feeling of being so important because I could answer my emails on the train, and it was like I needed to be contactable even when I wasn't in the office.
Right.
And it is kind of seductive to begin with.
Right.
And then you get drawn in and drawn in and drawn in, and then the next thing you realize is that just one more thing, and you've missed another date night, and you're still in the office and everybody else is gone, and the cleaner is like pushing a vacuum under your feet.
Right. Or you're like BFFs with the cleaner, they're like, hey girl, hey, and I'm like, hey girl, hey, right? Like, it's just, you shouldn't be like, I fell into that trap too. Like, I was always at work till 7 o'clock at night. Like, I didn't think that was weird. Like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, you leave at 5? Who does that? And there's a woman that I'm friends with who's a burnout coach, and she talks about how she picks her clients, and she says that corporate people contact her, and she'll be like, what's your culture like? And she just kind of, just by asking them a few questions, so she can understand, are they doing this so they can check the box, like, on the brochure we offer, support for like work-life balance support, or are they truly trying to change their culture? And it's hard when you are in a company that their company is very driven. I worked for startups for a really long time before I did my own thing. And as a startup, you're like, oh crap, I can't leave early because we're trying to get this next round of financing, or we're trying to do something else. So it was always kind of like there was a reason for you to stay.
Hmm.
They would bring dinner in, like, because like we had something to get done. And you just kind of felt like those days that you left at 5, you're just like, ugh, is someone gonna notice? Is someone gonna say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about that then, whether you're in that kind of extreme situation where it's literally like, well, of course you're not leaving because we've just ordered dinner and everyone would be watching you, or if it's
Right.
just something like maybe you're just genuinely really busy, you run your own business, you've got a family, you've got all of these kind of things. You said it's important to get more sleep and to reduce your stress.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people hear that and they think, I've got to completely radically overhaul my entire life. I've got to have a 2 hour long pre bedtime routine. And,
Exactly.
obviously, for most people, that's a huge turn off. They're like, well, I'm never going to be able to do that. So why would I even bother? Where can we start in a way that doesn't immediately trigger that? Well, I'm not going to be able to get an A plus plus doing this, so I'm not going
Yeah.
to start.
The and it's funny. I was the same way. Like I set a bedtime. Like, and it sounds like, like you're 9 years old, like set a bedtime. And, for those people who are like, I'm a night owl, I get that. I understand that. I am not, but I used to be. So if you are like just passing out on your couch, like whatever you're doing and you're just passing out on your couch, I want you to just note, like, what time do you find yourself like waking up and finding yourself on your couch? And I want you to set an alarm for like 15 minutes before that pass out time. So if you're passing out on your couch at 2 a.m., set an alarm for like 1:30, 1:45. And literally, if you're still awake, get off that couch and put yourself to bed.
Hmm.
And if you're someone who like, you're like, hey, I normally I'm not a night owl and I don't need to, stay up to the wee hours. Set a bedtime, ask yourself, like, if I need to get up at 7 a.m., like, what's 7 hours above that? And just put myself to bed. And, for the first few nights, you might just be like, and one sheep and two sheep. But, eventually your body will start to get used to it. The other thing is, like, when I also say bedtime ritual, and I'm not one of these like 500 things. It just is like when you start to like think about if you had children, right? Children have like a few things they need to do before bed. It might be tubby time. The stuffed animals might need to be in a certain spot, and there might be 2 or 3 stories you need to read. So ask yourself, like, what are things you find relaxing? And so, like, for me, it's like I started reading fiction books again during COVID, and I might make it 3 pages before I pass out, but it's like I look forward to reading. So it's like I wash up and lay in bed and I read for like probably 10 minutes and then I'm out.
Hmm.
So it doesn't have to be this like elaborate lighting candles and sound bathing and anything like that. I mean, if that shit brings you joy, rock on. But it can be something simple as like reading 3 pages in a non-fiction or a fiction book and just passing out,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
listening to hypnosis or whatever. But like, or you could just pass out.
Yeah, no, I do love that of kind of, getting yourself to bed. I remember when I was at McKinsey, I discovered the bedtime function on the iPhone and I
Mhm.
used to absolutely abuse it. I used to set it to go off an hour before. I used to set it to go off, I think at about 10:30 at night. And I used to use that not to go to bed, but to reassess the only other 3 things I was going to get done before I went to bed that night. Because
Right.
otherwise I wouldn't do that assessment until 1 in the morning. And then it
Right.
was too late. And by moving it forwards, it did. I mean, it was not like, this is your 1 hour before bed. Absolutely not. But it was the like, no, no, no. Anything you're doing now, it needs to really, really matter. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Yeah,
And it made a huge difference. So that's good
it
for
does.
like, and do you think that that one works as well if someone wants to reduce their sleep just by like planning a bedtime? Or if someone's thinking, actually, do you know what? Stress is my bigger thing. Would you give them different advice where to start?
If stress is your bigger thing, the biggest thing about stress is like it's what you said. It's like we get addicted to busy, right? Like I don't know if there's a gene inside of us that women need to be needed, right? There's just like I think about like my husband. My husband has no problem taking his phone and like leaving it in the other room. Like that is, and he's just like, or he'll look like, I just go on with his day. Where women were like, "Ugh, do I need? I should. I probably should." And like, meanwhile, you're mid dinner and you're gonna feel like you have to answer it. So for the biggest thing I tell people is that the bedtime function on your phone, huge, right? Not to prioritize, just to be like
Yes, don't
everything.
do it like me.
You have to take an extra step literally to get into that app. And it gives you that kind of like, do I want to take that extra step? But the biggest thing for I say for stress is like identify what causes you to have stress. Like, what are the biggest things that causes you to just that you like you lay in bed and you're like thinking about. And so if I write that down, and the next step from there is like, do I need to own it? Like, is there anything on this list that I need to own? And like some of the simplest delegation things is like grocery shopping, right? Say what you will about Rona. One of the biggest things that Rona brought is being able to delegate grocery shopping. I no longer have to get in and push the cart. Most grocery stores nowadays, I can pre-order and pick it up, or someone will ring my doorbell and bring it to me. So little things like that, or like, do you have to be the person to unload the dishwasher all the time? Do you got kids? Do you have a partner? Can someone do that for you? Do you have to clean your house? Can you hire a cleaner? So it's like finding that even you're like, oh, that's not really like stressful. Yeah, because you have to do it. Like you're thinking about it. Like I have a pile of laundry right now. I'm doing this podcast and I'm like, oh, when am I going to unload that pile of laundry? Like it's here,
Yep.
right? It's not loud, but like I'm going to get off this podcast, walk downstairs and see that freaking pile of laundry and be like, dang it, when am I going to get to it? So I want you to start thinking about like even the little things that you could just get off of that like emotional, checklist. How do I delegate that stuff? And then we can start talking about the big stuff. Maybe you look at your job and you're like, am I doing stuff that I don't need to do? Is it because we're short staffed? Because I don't want to let control of it.
Mm-hmm.
Y-
Yeah.
y- So it's like, I'd rather you start with the easy stuff. So you start to feel like, yeah, this isn't so hard. This isn't so bad. And then we can move to like the real poop of the problems.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, delegation is actually one of the things that I work on with my clients all the time in that working context, but often exactly the same thing. Like, well, think about your home life too.
Right.
As you say, what could you ask for help with so that it's not on your plate, so it's not part of your mental load? And that's the key too. It's the not only like, oh, well, I can ask my husband to do the laundry, but I have to tell him every single piece, and I'm still
Right.
buying the laundry detergent and I'm still sorting the clothes and he's just putting them in the washer. That is not delegation.
Right. No. And it's like being like, one of the biggest challenges with my husband is that like I don't dry a lot of my things. And I was like, here's like there's now like a post-it note that says if it is a foundational garment, it does not get dried. If it is a
There you go.
workout piece of clothing, it does not get dried. Boom. And you walk away.
Yeah, I love it. Look, I could talk about this forever and ever because we are definitely getting into my favorite wheelhouse right now, which is helping women to have more time and space in their lives. But we are coming to the end. So, Kim, people who've been listening, they're like, I definitely need this in my life. How do they find you, follow you, work with you?
All right. So I'm pretty easy to work with. Just contact me. um, you can find me on Facebook, Kim Barnes Jefferson. You can find me on Instagram, Kim Jefferson Coach, or on my website, KimBarnesJefferson.com. I'm pretty simple
Pretty
to find.
consistent.
Yeah. And if you're still like, oh, I just only heard a snippet of her, you can listen to my podcast called the Fit Girl Magic Podcast. And I have over 200 episodes on so many different health topics and life topics that you'll probably be like, you could binge forever.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me. I have really learned a lot. Definitely need to go and do some checking myself about whether or not I am still holding on to things that I should be delegating.
We all have it. We all do. It's crazy.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you're catching this on the replay, let us know what you found most interesting that you heard today and what you're going to change based on the advice that Kim has given us.
Thank you.
Thanks.